Okay, you and Brian were involved in a documentary. Did you get to see the Vince documentary yet?
Yeah, I saw it last night.
All right. First thoughts on it. What did you think it was good?
I think given that I heard from friends that didn't know anything about Vince McMahon, and I watched with people who knew limited about Vince McMahon, and were just, I think, a combination of fascinated and appalled, and thought that the subject matter blew them away, but because they didn't know this much, and when it's all thrown together in two, like, to me, it's like, wow, this is all thrown together in 2 hours. There's a lot of stuff over the last 40 years. And when it was over, it was like, man, he looked really, really bad. Sometimes, like, I don't like, get the full gist of him because there's so much and it's for so long. But when you throw it all together, and there's plenty of other things that weren't out there, and in 2 hours, again, there's a lot of stuff that could go in. They could go into more detail, but they didn't have time. They did a lot of, stuff. If you watch like Dark Side, obviously a lot of the stuff was repeated, but this wasn't meant for the people who watch Dark Side. This was meant for a different audience. From a factual historical standpoint, I found minor problems, but very, very minor. I mean, the only one that was, there was the one minor one, I guess, was acting like, he took Jim Barnett's TV, in Georgia. And that was just completely incorrect. I mean, Jim Barnett had been gone from Georgia for years and was actually involved in the other end. But,
right.
Aside from, I mean, he was a director of operations for WWE at the time that deal went down, or WWF. But, I mean, so as far as factual, I mean, I look at that stuff from a factual standpoint. And it's like, they got the facts right. There's a lot of different things there. Yeah. In the Montreal thing, there's a lot of, the Montreal thing is not something you can do in 6 minutes because it's a more complicated story. And that one, I think, got, and I don't really think Darkseid did a great job on the Montreal thing to begin with.
No.
So that one, I think, was a little bit weaker. Overall, I mean, it was, I wasn't unhappy with it. And I saw people who were, again, people who didn't know the story. I think watching it was kind of like, well, I mean, it's not like there was anything there that I didn't know, or anything like that was new. It was, I don't think anything, was unfair. I thought Brian did great on it. I thought Brian was really, really strong on the show. Russo hit and miss, and some of the others were from old tapes. And I think Brandon Thurston and Brian Solomon, I thought, were very good. So I mean, I think that, but it was like all reporters, and and I think, yeah,
very little talent, I guess.
Yeah, well, a lot of talent wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big part of it. I mean, the list of talent they wanted, I don't have every name confirmed, but there was a very big list of talent they wanted that they didn't get. I think that there was a lot of people who did not trust that Vince will never come back and absolutely wanted nothing to do with this.
Do you think there was anything related to the plane ride from hell and how that turned out to where they may have lost some trust with the producers?
Yes, I do think so. That scared a lot. The way the plane ride from hell story came scared a lot of people that they had done stuff with, who got so much heat from being involved in it that, again, like, just were kind of like, maybe I shouldn't, be on, these shows. So that was some of it. And others, I mean, you could just tell others were people who, who I know and clearly, didn't want to be involved in something that they perceived would be that negative to Vince, because they like Vince, or even if they don't like Vince, they may need Vince, and they did not trust the idea that, number one, if you say really bad things about Vince, the current regime, because Stephanie's his daughter, might hold it against you. Or again, the feeling that, hey, you never know if Vince will be back, and you don't want to burn that bridge either. Or not so much burn the bridge, because you can never really burn a bridge with Vince, but get him mad. You don't want to make Vince mad. There's no upside in that to a lot of people who are wrestlers or around wrestling.
What do you think about the latest piece from the Wall Street Journal? The most aggregated comment was Vince saying that, he left too early and took some bad advice.
Yeah. So I checked around on that, and that's absolutely accurate. he definitely wants to come back, and there's people who are very much. I mean, again, even people who I know that are tight with Vince and really never thought he would leave, and they're pretty much saying he can't come back. It's just like there's just too much that will happen if he comes back. I think there's a fear of a stock price, a fear of like sponsors may have looked the other way if he had never left, but bringing him back, I think that there's a real fear about sponsors because him leaving kind of indicted him and kind of brought plausibility and stuff to the stories. They could just say, it's, rumors and we don't really know. And it's not like whatever. But when he left over it, now he wants to come back on these type of stories in 2022. I think that there's a lot of fear. And, also a lot of people are much happier that he's gone. I think that that's the other part of it. So
I think if he finds a way to come back, there's going to be a lot more leaks of his behavior that come out.
Not only that, yeah, but again, the thing that's the most interesting, and I don't have the answer, but boy, oh boy, as before on the previous ones, and even more today, is people in wrestling speculating like, okay, who are those? How, the timing of everything. It's like this doc comes out, it's on the same day. The Vince story is about to break, as far as him wanting to come back, and then new stories come out, which almost seems like, okay, somebody who really knows Vince wants to come back is trying to throw out more stuff to make sure he can't. And who is that person? And it's a fascinating thing. I don't have an answer. Everyone can speculate, but and people will and have. It's actually what I've been hearing all day is people who are speculating who's the person that that is doing this at this time. So I'm sure I'm not sure it will ever come out, but it's a very interesting subject. And believe me, I've been getting a lot of stuff from a lot of people regarding WWE in the last 24, 48 hours. I mean, just different people with different stories and things like that. Nothing
stuff you can report on in the Observer?
No. I mean, it's no, not at all. But there's like a lot of there's a lot of people who would I'm sure like stuff out based on different people right now, not just WWE.
Yeah,
but from WWE right now, definitely.
Interesting. What did you think about Russo's comment about he thinks that Vince is like doing as much as he could without getting in trouble right now in WWE?
I don't think so. I mean, just everything that I hear. I mean, is he talking to Stephanie and Triple H? I'm sure he is. I'm sure they talk on the phone. I'm sure he may suggest things, but I mean, as far as being overt, as far as it's a different product. I mean, you can tell. And again, it's a different mentality. People are being hired that Vince would never hire. People are not being fired regularly as was happening under Vince. There are people who would be let go who Vince would not have brought back who are there. So ultimately, it is not Vince. Now, again, like I said, does he talk to them and do they listen to him? I'm sure that. But I mean, as far as does he have a lot of power? I mean, there's always the power when your daughter's in charge, right?
Yeah.
So there's some, yeah.
My just sort of take on the documentary in of itself, I thought it was a little lazy by using all the dark side stuff so heavy because the dark side stuff is not actual documentary. It's like sort of drama, docudrama. So I thought that the mood of the documentary when they were telling the straightforward story was good, but then when they intermixed all that dark side footage, then it looked a little odd with the how they do it with the acted scenes and stuff.
Yeah. No, I didn't think the acted scenes in this thing probably were the right way to do it either.
And they were definitely trying to shoehorn as many things from the Dark Side series as they could, which I thought was a little forced as well.
And by doing so, by trying to force so much in there, they didn't get a chance to really go heavily into some of the stuff that perhaps needed more time. But, when you look at it, most of those stories, when you're talking about the history of WWE or the history of Vince, I mean, they did get a lot of stuff
Mhm.
You know what I mean? There really is so many stories. There's some that didn't, that wasn't as strong as it could have been because Darkseid never did it. You know, and again, and those would be the weaker subjects that they didn't go into or they barely went into. So
Yeah.
it was very much a compilation of, you know, Darkseid with a little bit of other, you know, with there's Darkseid and you know, up to date comments by me, Brian, and Brandon, Vince Russo, and you know, Brian Solomon. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what it was. Yeah.
All right. So, based on what you saw, do you think the Netflix version of the Vince thing is going to be similar? Do you think it's going to
No, I do
be
not think it'll be similar. No, no, not
okay?
at all. The Netflix, you know, again, the Netflix is a WWE production. So
Yeah.
right there, that tells you it's not going to be similar. I mean, they may go into stuff. You know, they certainly did not shy away from the subjects that were on the show last night. You know, I mean, when they had me in, I mean, we discussed pretty much every one of those things. But in the final product,
Yeah.
will
What do they
they
put in
do
there?
that? Will they do that in the end? You know, they have obviously a lot more people, including Vince. You know, in you know, Vince did sit downs for them and others people who will, you know, in the end try to explain why those things aren't true or not important or whatever. I mean, I presume that Vince and WWE will get the last word on all of those subjects, and the tone will be different. But I don't think. I mean, and Vince even told the Netflix people, you know, don't run. I don't think he wanted them to run away from his stories, and I think maybe he wanted a chance to address them. You
Mhm.
know, so I think it'd be a very, very, very different. Yeah.